Hey guys, welcome to this course or this class. So this is going to be something that will potentially work on class and then continue on outside of work. Well, what we're going to do in this application is we're going to create an application using NodeJS as our web environment, using JavaScript as our source code, and also using NoSQL as our backend SQL code. So what I'm going to do is walk you through how to create this application, and then I want you to create the same application as best practice, but I want you to use the fundamentals, the tools that we use to create your own application, something a little bit different, but just having the understanding fundamentals of how to create an application utilizing the array elements, such as the array group and so forth. But before we get started, we have to do some installations and so this first video will just kind of get our environment established, importantly. So what I do want to do is show you what we're ultimately going to try to create. So I have it going locally right now. Local hosts. There we go. All right, so I have this app right here going right now. So this is what we're trying to do, is create an application that allows us. So as you see here, I have a name, I have a little background, so it has a little CSS in it, has a little counter. The thing is, I'm looking for the ability to add something to my database. So I have a database out here. Let me refresh it real quick. I have this database out here that we're using. And so if I come out here and run a query, oops. All right, there we go. There's our collection. Data, because I just purged it. All right, so what we want to do is add something. Let's say Steelers will beat the Chargers. Probably not. Sounds good. Or we could say the Steelers will lose to the Chargers. Maybe. So now if I pull up my database here and refresh it, now I have a collection. It was a to-do database. Now I have a collection of data. So now I do have data, but before I didn't. So now if I come out here and click on this, I have two rows of data. And if I refresh it, refresh all. See, I only have one collection of data now, which is, it'll disappear once I shut it down here. So you kind of get my gist here. We just have one set of data. So the idea is to be able to figure out a way to move that data into the environment. All right, so first and foremost, we have to set up an environment. So let's set up a new project group. What does it get here? I'll create a new folder. I'll call it, what's this, lab? I don't know what lab this is. One second. This is 7. All right, so we'll call it lab 7. I don't like that though. But fine, whatever. All right, so level 7, hit node. All right, so another thing is I need to go out to, so let me get rid of my service that I have running here. All right, so this one right here, Control C, perfect. All right, so let me see where I'm at. And I want to be into lab 7. I think it was Git. Yep, there it is. All right, cool. So we're in lab 7. All right. So now we need to install some packages to get started. So this will be the first part of the video, is install the packages. First thing is npm init. So this will build our JSON file. So I'll just hit enter through here. That index.js, we'll have to change that to server.js. So we'll change that at some point. Next thing we need to do is install Mongoose. So we'll do npm install Mongoose. And so let's pull this up here. That won't work anymore because I shut it off. So Mongoose is part of the package for NodeSQL. So Mongoose is a MongoDB object modeling tool. It's designed to work with an environment. So we'll be utilizing that a little bit. The next one that we're going to be working on is we're going to be adding something called method. I'll type in here, method over. Well, I can't even spell override. And method override lets you use, if you're using HTTP verbs such as put or delete, stuff that we use once you're using REST API. I can't even talk. That'll be an example of something that we'll need for APIs. So it's nice to have it. So we'll install that as well. So let's go back over here, and we can just hit up and take this off and do method override. Next one is Morgan. So RGN. So the package is called Morgan. It's for HTTP request logger middleware for NodeJS. So it's something like this that you can use, require additional information. Another one that we're going to use, I might as well pull it up before it's called Body Parser. Maybe you've used some of these, I'm not sure. So it's able to parse some of the data from JSON from the body of the application itself. So there's some areas that we'll use this, and then we'll be using some AngularJS as well. So let's do this. I know it's not an AngularJS class, but Morgan will install that package and one more package I can think of is the body parser. And that should be it on the what do you call it? Our files. All right. So now if we go out to here, we have our node modules, we have our package JSON file. So what we're going to do here is create our structure that we're going to have in place. So structure will be the environment that we have and so forth, so that we kind of get things set up. So we'll kind of just set up our folders, talk a little bit about what they are, and so forth. Hit under our lab 7 here, and we'll do a new folder, and I'll call it app. And we'll create a subfolder of app, and the subfolder will be called models. So we'll do new folder, models. And then we want to have a config folder that'll be under lab 7. We'll talk about what all this stuff is in a moment here. I found this to be easier just to have all this stuff in place, so you have to come back. And we'll set up a public folder, and that'll be where HTML is at. We need to create a subfolder under public for JS, for JavaScript. So I'll call it JS. and I'll need to have a subfolder under JS will be for our controllers. So it'll be kind of like MVC controllers, and then we'll need something for our services that will be under JS as well. All right, so we have this, our controllers, our services. I think that's it to get things started. So just kind of walk through this a little bit. The way we'll design this is under app, we'll set up our routes. This will be something that we talk about before we even get to this point here. So there'll be something that we'll set up in our lab, walking through an exercise that does something similar to setting up routes, but it'll be for something smaller, just to kind of paint the picture how the routes work and so forth. If you ever use MVC, you're familiar with this. This is something that they use in MVC, whether you're using .NET or Java or whatever the case is. But anyways, nonetheless, this is what this is for. So we'll close that out right here. So we'll have routes, and then under our model, we'll have a JavaScript file, some type of JavaScript file that uses Mongoose to do some information. Our configuration file, this file right here, will have a configuration for our database. So what we'll do is we'll set up a JavaScript file that gives us two different things. It's a connection file basically. All it is a connection file that allows us to connect to the database. We could do a remote one and we could do a local one. So we can set up a remote one that later on we could connect to our shell account and pull data from there. And local will be able to connect to our local environment, what we're using in class. Let's see, moving on. New modules, those are just our modules that we installed. Our public, under public, we will primarily have our HTML file. So we'll have like an index.html file that provides all our information. We'll reuse some AngularJS. So like I mentioned, we'll be using AngularJS to a small degree. So we're going to grab that library that's out there in Google. We'll also use someone else's Bootstrap information. So we'll grab some CSS. You can modify it as you need to, which is just for this exercise. And then we could, connect our controllers and all that stuff in there. Under the JavaScript, as I mentioned, we have the controllers and the services. The controllers will be it'll be using those commands that it talked about. So we'll be using a get command, which will be basically a function. It gets all the items that we have to do and show them by utilizing a service. The reason in this controller we're using scope, which is a form of AngularJS. If you're not familiar with what AngularJS is, it's just it's a way to pass data back and forth primarily. So basically, in that section, one of the sections we'll be using AngularJS. It helps with some of the data. Main purpose is for AngularJS is transferring data. So there's a $ scope in AngularJS. It's a built-in object that contains data. So it allows us to utilize a functionality that's already in there. So inside that, it has a controller function, and it assigns a value to another function. So the scope is kind of like it's the combination between the controller and the view. So when you're using MVC, it's the guy in between. So it would be like you have two pieces of bread, and what's in between the two pieces of bread? Peanut butter and jelly. The peanut butter and jelly would be like our scope, and the other pieces of bread would be like our view, and it would be like our controller. So we'll use that in here without a deep dive into what AngularJS is and how it works. So that'll be in our main area. Under our services, this will be a way for us to simply set up a function to return all of our routes. So this is, I tell people this is the proper way when writing code. You learn how to write code, but when you actually put it together and go into like some type of MVC for design or a different design format, These are different ways that you could establish stuff that makes it easier. We'll also set up a core file under the public file, and it'll be a way to call the module. Ultimately, that'll be pretty much primarily it that we'll have in here. So there is a lot of coding to do, but it'll be a cool, fun experience. The next step that I did want to do before I forget is I think in this video, it would be important to set up your database. So go out to Mongo, and what we're going to do is set up a new database out here. So if I remember how to do this, you could right click on it, add database, and I'll just call it PPU tasks. So it's going to be my Point Park University task, and hit OK. And so now I have that database set up. It'll allow me to connect to it. So in the next video, we'll walk through all the files that we have to add to get things started. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.